Okay, so what I thought we should do to begin with, because we are talking about two people who are really incredibly knowledgeable in all areas of sustainability in Portland, is to ask each panelist going down the line from their point of view, where they feel, and I'm deeply sorry for my voice, it sounds really horrible from in here, so I hate to inflict it on you, but where they feel is Portland now and what its potential is in a really honest, straightforward way.
Portland is definitely out near the front, if we're not at the front. We were the first region in the country to have regional urban planning, the first state with the bottle bill and land use planning, things like that, and that set Portland apart. And I know people have come to Portland for years before the whole sustainability thing to study this. And we got out in front on sustainability for a number of reasons. One is the creation of Susan's office by Dan Salzman, the Office of Sustainable Development. We were one of the first in the country to do that. Gerda Edelin got out early in green building and became the prominent and premier green building commercial development company in the country and probably world. More LEED registered projects than any other developer in the country for sure. And a lot of little things all happening in parallel that kind of fed each other. But while this was all happening, the rest of the world was also noticing this. And Chicago, and Austin, and now even Los Angeles and San Francisco have legislation for green building. A lot of places are chasing after this.
We are in a place where it is relatively easy to do well, and so we have to measure ourselves by the potential of that context. Whether it was thousands of years ago where we believed that the natives before white man basically conserved what they had, or when the pioneers came out, they established sustainable agricultural practices that were really remarkable when viewed in the context of the world's experiences at that time, or as you just mentioned, after NEPA, we stopped building freeways, we expanded transit, we learned how to make compact cities, we created the bottle bill and a few other things with reasonable success, and now we enjoy a reputation for taking a lot of initiative, and these are the people who are doing it in sustainable design practices. It is, I think, in part because of where we exist.
I do think that the richness of what has happened here in Portland and Oregon too, for a lot of the reasons you talked about with kind of our history going back to the mid-70s with bottle bill and whatnot, and the freeways, et cetera, and the transit mall. I think it's a little bit more in our DNA than it is in a lot of other cities. As to the future, I've never been more optimistic about the future, and obviously my industry is in a very challenging time if you happen to read the front page of the paper today. But nonetheless, I think the opportunity for Portland and Oregon is just astounding. I recently had the opportunity to be over in Asia, and my first reaction was I've never seen skies that bad. I've never seen rivers that black. And just the impact of it it can do nothing but stun you. On the other hand, you look at the design community we have here, the engineering community we have here, and the construction community we have here, and I think our challenge is, again, I think we are on the edge of not thinking big enough. And I think that Oregon is in a position that it could really provide a leadership position, not just on the West Coast, not just the United States, but worldwide.
How many of you know that we actually have a global warming plan in Portland? So just a handful, and yet we've had this since 1993, and the success of it, where we are right now, is that in Portland, in Multnomah County, greenhouse gas emissions, carbon dioxide emissions have been reduced by 14% per capita since 1990. So but we've also had a big population growth, so we're back to 1990 levels. The rest of the U.S. is up 16%. So we're doing some things right here. But we haven't done it because of global warming or because there's been this huge thing. We've done it because it saves businesses money, it saves homeowners money, it gets less traffic congestion, less air pollution locally, all these other reasons for why we do these same actions. The challenge, I think, is that we need to reduce emissions by 80% over the next 2 decades or so. And that's not a lot of time. So I think the challenge now is, in the past, in Portland, what we have that most other cities, San Francisco, Chicago, Austin, the other leaders who constantly say they want to be the green city, and then we just say, well, we are, and they kind of walk away, and then they come back to us and they hire all of my friends away to go move to their cities so that they can be the green city too.
my outlook is you know, what is a strategic move and what is a tactical move? And I think about you know, our identity as a community and you know, the identity of being a very sustainable community and our ability to implement these private-public partnerships. You know, comes from a, you know, a long history, but it seems that it also comes from a couple of, you know, very, very key moves that were made, you know, in some cases 30 years ago, in some cases longer than that, back in the 30s, in terms of really thinking about the city holistically. And in many ways we're kind of living off the bankroll of that.
We had Julia Hildesby Novi, who was going to originally be on the panel. She's the executive director of the Lemelson Foundation. And the Lemelson Foundation does really amazing work. They do it from Portland, from Oregon, but they reach out to developing countries and try to extend projects that create more healthy, just communities through sustainable practices. And I'm wondering if we could look out a bit from the world. I mean, we're really describing Portland and Oregon as a place that connects into a region, and we have a world of regions, and they are interconnected, and solving this complicated issue or problem here doesn't necessarily mean that we still won't go over Scott's cliff. So I wonder if in the last few minutes we could talk a little bit about how we can reach out to the world and even to those parts of our community here that don't necessarily benefit from the best that we're bringing to sustainability and in the making of objects.
One thing I think that Randy mentioned that we haven't done really well in Portland is we have a great number of citizens and businesses who care about these issues, but they haven't been articulated well in one vision. And I think the mayor's visioning process got a little bit of the way there, but what we need, I think, is someone, the new mayor, to come out and say, here's where we're headed, with one voice, and have council behind them and say, you know, we're going to recycle basically everything, you know, by 2030. We're going to, you know, improve all existing buildings in the next 15 or 20 years. We're going to be net zero for all new construction by 2030, and set some really high goals. And then once those are set, I really think that the private sector and the public sector will come together, and with the financial interests, to be able to get there. But I just don't see us with some bold vision that's been set out there that everybody can get behind.
At the AIA convention, there was a keynote which was about security, and I thought, oh, they're going to talk about some insane thing, and I was ready to dismiss them, and as I tend to do with the AIA, I'm sorry. And one of the things that happened was they invited a federal judge, a former CIA operative, and a security specialist who was a refugee from Uganda. And one of the things that they all talked about is that we can build all the fortresses that we want, but 3 billion people on this earth live on $2, less than $2 a day. So I think, to Mark's point, I think this is a really important problem to solve, and the wealthier nations really have to think about this, because as the judge was saying, give them a loaf of bread and they're ready to blow up anything they, the person who gave them the bread dictated. So I think we have a huge issue here that is beyond our borders, beyond our understanding, that we're going to have to be part of that solution, because
I think it's a two-way street too. It's not just us going there, it's what we do here. I mean, imagine if we'd taken a fraction of what we spent in that desert and put it in an incentive. Imagine if we charged $1 a gallon tax and put half of that to education and half of it to incentives. We wouldn't be talking about drilling up in Alaska. We wouldn't be going over to Saudi Arabia asking to pump more oil. You know, we'd be having a more prosperous economy. And, you know, I really believe it's two ways. I think it's a national security issue we're dealing with.
That's why I want him to run for